Captain Jake Morrison stared at the star charts on his small ship's main screen. The human scout vessel Wanderer had been flying through empty space for 3 weeks now. Jake's mission was simple: find new worlds that humans could settle on. His ship was small with only 5 crew members, but it was fast and could travel far from home. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on the sensors," said Lisa Park, the ship's engineer. She was young but very good at her job. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as she tried to figure out what she was seeing. Jake walked over to look at her screen. "What kind of strange?" "Big ships. Really big. And they're heading straight for us." Ben Torres, the communications officer, looked up from his station. "I'm picking up radio signals. They're not speaking any language I know." Jake felt his stomach tighten. They were far from home, too far for help to reach them quickly. "How many ships?" "At least 6, Lisa said. "Each one is 10 times bigger than us." The alien ships appeared on the main screen a few minutes later. They were gray and looked like long spears with weapon ports along their sides. Jake had never seen anything like them. No human had ever met aliens before. "They're sending us a message," Ben said. "I think they want us to stop." "Can you understand what they're saying?" "A little. My computer is trying to translate. I think they want to come aboard our ship." Jake looked at his crew. Besides Lisa and Ben, he had 2 other people with him. Sam Green was their pilot, a quiet man who could fly anything. Amy Scott was their science officer, always curious about everything they found. "What do you think?" Jake asked them. "They have bigger guns than us," Sam said. "A lot bigger." Amy looked worried. "If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. Maybe they just want to talk." Jake made his decision. "Ben, tell them they can send a small group to our ship, but make it clear that we're peaceful." The alien ships moved closer. One of them extended a long tube that connected to the Wanderer's airlock. Jake and his crew waited near the airlock door, not sure what to expect. The door opened with a hiss. 3 aliens walked in. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with gray skin and 4 arms. They wore dark uniforms and carried weapons that looked like nothing Jake had ever seen. The leader of the aliens spoke in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against metal. Ben's computer translated the words slowly. "I am Commander Vextal of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender your vessel and submit to questioning." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. We're explorers. We mean no harm." Commander Vextal tilted his head. "You are a primitive species. You have entered Imperial space without permission. Your ship and crew now belong to the Empire." "We didn't know this was your space," Jake said, trying to stay calm. "We can leave peacefully." "No. You cannot leave. You will be taken to an Imperial world for study. Resistance will result in your death." Jake looked at his crew. They all had the same worried look in their eyes. The aliens were treating them like animals, not people. "We won't resist," Jake said. "But we want to talk to your leaders." Commander Vextal made a sound that might have been laughter. "Primitives do not make demands. You will come with us now." The alien commander gestured to his soldiers. They raised their weapons and started moving toward Jake's crew. That's when Lisa Park did something unexpected. She had been slowly moving toward the ship's control panel. Now she slammed her hand down on the emergency button. All the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red light. In the confusion, Jake grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and sprayed it at the aliens. The aliens couldn't see clearly in the red light and white foam. Jake shouted to his crew, "Now!" Sam and Amy grabbed metal tools from a repair kit and started hitting the aliens' weapons. Ben ran to his station and started the ship's engines. Lisa was already sealing the airlock behind the aliens. Commander Vextal roared in anger and swung one of his forearms at Jake. Jake ducked and hit the alien in the stomach with the fire extinguisher. The alien stumbled backward. "Lisa, can you get us out of here?" Jake yelled. "Working on it." She was typing commands as fast as she could. "Sam, I need you to fly us toward that asteroid field." Sam jumped into the pilot seat. The Wanderer suddenly jerked to the left, throwing everyone against the walls. The alien boarding tube broke away from their ship. Through the main screen, Jake could see the alien ships turning to follow them. Bright lights flashed from their weapons. "They're shooting at us," Amy shouted. "I can see that," Sam said, making the ship dive and roll like a fighter pilot. "Lisa, how long until we can jump to hyperspace?" 30 seconds. An alien weapon blast hit their ship, making it shake hard. Sparks flew from the control panels. 20 seconds. Another blast, this one closer. Jake could feel the heat through the hull. 10 seconds. Commander Vextel and his soldiers were pounding on the airlock door, trying to break it down. "Now!" Lisa shouted. Sam hit the hyperspace button. The stars stretched into lines, and suddenly they were somewhere else entirely. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all breathing hard, but they were alive. They had just escaped from aliens who thought humans were primitive and weak. But Jake knew something the aliens didn't know yet. The Wanderer wasn't humanity's only ship. It wasn't even close to their best ship. It was just a scout vessel, sent ahead to see what was out there. And now they knew what was out there. An empire that thought it could capture humans like animals. Jake sat down in his captain's chair and looked at Ben. "Set course for New Haven Colony, fast as we can." "Yes, sir. Should I send a message ahead?" Jake nodded. "Tell them we found aliens. Tell them the aliens are hostile. And tell them to get ready for a fight." As the Wanderer flew through hyperspace toward home, Jake wondered what the aliens would think when they realized their mistake. They had just made enemies of the human race, and humans were very good at being enemies. Admiral Kethamore stood in the command center of the Imperial Fleet Base on Nexus Prime. The huge room was filled with screens showing star maps and battle reports from across the Zephyrian Empire. For 800 years, the Empire had ruled the galaxy. No species had ever successfully fought back against them, until now. "Show me the report again," Admiral Kethamore said to his aide, a younger Zephyrian named Sub-Commander Rexton. The main screen lit up with Commander Vextal's battle footage. Admiral Kethamore watched as the small human ship somehow escaped from 6 Imperial vessels. He saw the primitive creatures fighting back with simple tools. He watched them disappear into hyperspace using a jump pattern that should have torn their ship apart. "How is this possible?" Admiral Kethamore asked. "Our sensors show their ship was made of basic metals. Their weapons were nothing more than hand tools, yet they defeated a full boarding party." Sub-Commander Rexton pulled up the technical analysis. "Sir, there are several disturbing facts. First, their ship's hull contained materials our scientists cannot identify. Second, their power output was far higher than it should be for a vessel of that size. Third, their hyperspace jump calculations were perfect even under combat stress." Admiral Kethamore studied the data. In 800 years of conquest, the Empire had developed a simple method. They would find a new species, demonstrate their superior power, and the aliens would surrender. Sometimes there was brief resistance, but it never lasted long. "What about their communication signals?" the Admiral asked. "We recorded everything, sir. Our computers are still trying to understand their language, but we have learned some basic information. They call themselves humans. They mentioned something called New Haven Colony. A colony world, so they have spread to multiple planets." "Appears so, sir. But how many colonies could a primitive species have? 10? 20 at most?" Admiral Kethamore nodded. "Even 20 colonies would not be a threat to the Empire. But something about this situation felt wrong. The humans had fought too well, escaped too easily." Meanwhile, 3 star systems away, the Wanderer was approaching New Haven Colony. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair, watching the familiar planet grow larger on the screen. New Haven was one of humanity's newer colonies, home to only 2 million people, but it had something very important. Amy Rodriguez. Amy Rodriguez was the Colonial Defense Coordinator for this sector of human space. She was tough, smart, and had spent her whole career preparing for the day when humans might meet hostile aliens. "New Haven Control, this is Captain Morrison on the Wanderer. I need to speak with Coordinator Rodriguez immediately. This is a code red emergency." 30 minutes later, Jake was sitting in Amy's office. The room was simple but filled with charts and military reports. Amy listened without interrupting as Jake told her everything that had happened. "So they think we're primitive," Amy said when Jake finished. "And they tried to capture you like animals." "That's right. They called us a primitive species. They seemed surprised when we fought back." Amy stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the colony's small spaceport. A few cargo ships were loading supplies. It looked peaceful, but Amy knew that was about to change. "How many ships did they have?" "6 that we saw, but their leader mentioned an empire. This might be just a small part of their forces." Amy nodded and activated her communication system. "Get me Dr. Nathan Cole. Tell him to come here right away." Dr. Nathan Cole was New Haven's chief scientist. He studied alien life, even though until now there had been no aliens to study. "Wendoe?" "He arrived," Amy quickly explained the situation. "Did you get any biological samples?" Dr. Cole asked Jake. "Some blood on my fire extinguisher." And Ben recorded their voices. Dr. Cole's eyes lit up. "Good. I can analyze their biology and maybe find weaknesses." "What did they look like?" Jake described the aliens in detail. Their gray skin, 4 arms, the way they moved. Dr. Cole took notes on everything. "Interesting," Dr. Cole said. 4 arms suggest they evolved from creatures that lived in trees or complex environments. But their behavior sounds very rigid, very organized, like insects or hive creatures." Amy turned to Jake. "What about their technology? Their ships?" "Advanced, but not as advanced as I expected. Their weapons were powerful but simple. Their ship designs looked like they never changed. Everything seemed standard." "What do you mean by standard?" "All their ships looked exactly the same. Same size, same weapons, same formation flying, like they all came from the same factory." Amy and Dr. Cole exchanged looks. This was important information. "Dr. Cole, I want you to analyze everything from their ship. Find out how their technology works and how we can fight it," Amy said. "Jake, I need you to write a detailed report of everything that happened. Every word they said, every movement they made." Amy walked back to her desk and activated the colony's emergency communication system. Soon she was talking to leaders on dozens of human worlds. "This is Coordinator Rodriguez on New Haven. We have confirmed contact with a hostile alien species. They call themselves the Zephyrian Empire. All colonies are now on high alert." The responses came quickly. Colony after colony reported that they were ready to defend themselves. Amy was proud of how quickly humans organized when faced with danger. Over the next few days, Dr. Cole made several important discoveries. The alien blood showed that Zephyrians were much stronger than humans, but they had slower reflexes. Their rigid social structure meant they always followed orders exactly, which made them predictable. Most importantly, their technology was standardized across their entire empire. Every ship used the same weapons, the same shields, the same tactics. This made them efficient, but it also made them vulnerable. If humans could find a way to defeat one Zephyrian ship, they could defeat them all. "They've been conquering primitive species for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt," Dr. Cole explained to Amy and Jake. "They expect every battle to be the same." Amy smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Then they're going to get a big surprise." While the humans prepared their defenses, Admiral Kethmore was having his own problems. Emperor Zarthul himself had heard about the failed capture mission. The Emperor was not happy. "You allowed primitive creatures to humiliate the Imperial fleet," the Emperor said during their video conference. His voice was cold with anger. "My Emperor, they were not as primitive as we first believed. We may need to send a larger force." "How large?" Admiral Kethmore thought carefully. The humans had 1 small ship and maybe 20 colonies. "A battle fleet should be sufficient, my Emperor. 50 ships. Make it 100 ships. I want this problem eliminated quickly. Find their homeworld and destroy it as an example to others." "Yes, my Emperor." After the call ended, Admiral Kethmore stared at the star charts. 100 ships to deal with primitive aliens seemed like overkill. But orders were orders. He did not know that the humans were already preparing to show him just how wrong he was about them being primitive. And he had no idea that what he thought was their entire civilization was actually just the beginning. Emperor Zarthul sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the imperial palace. The throne room was massive, with walls that stretched up so high they disappeared into darkness. For 800 years, his family had ruled the galaxy from this room. No enemy had ever challenged their power for long, but now there was something different. Something that made the Emperor feel worried for the first time in his long life. "War Master Quindar," the Emperor called. His voice echoed through the empty throne room. War Master Quindar walked forward and knelt before the throne. He was the Empire's best military commander, a Zephyrian who had conquered 40 star systems for the Empire. His 4 arms were covered in battle scars, and his gray skin was darker than most Zephyrians, showing his age and experience. "My Emperor, I am ready to serve. These humans have embarrassed us. I want you to take the investigation fleet and find their homeworld. Learn everything about them, then destroy them completely." War Master Quindar stood up. "How many ships shall I take, my Emperor?" "Take 50 ships, elite vessels with our best crews. I want to know how many worlds they have, how many ships they possess, and what their weaknesses are." "It shall be done, my Emperor." 2 days later, War Master Quindar's fleet entered hyperspace. 50 of the Empire's finest warships, each one capable of destroying a small planet. Quindar was confident this would be enough to deal with any primitive species. The fleet followed the trail left by the human scout ship Wanderer. Zephyrian sensors could track hyperspace signatures for weeks after a ship had passed. It was like following footprints in space. But War Master Quindar did not know that the humans were watching him. Commander Kate Miller floated in the command center of her ship, the Shadowrunner. The Shadowrunner was different from the Wanderer. It was built for stealth, painted black and covered with technology that made it almost invisible to enemy sensors. Kate had been following the Zephyrian fleet for 3 days. Her ship was fast and quiet, staying just close enough to observe the aliens without being detected. She was 35 years old and had spent half her life in space. Her job was reconnaissance, which meant watching enemies and learning their secrets. "Captain, they're scanning everything," said her sensor operator, a young man named Pete Walsh. "They're recording the location of every planet, every asteroid, every piece of space dust." Kate nodded. "They're being thorough. What about their formation?" "Same pattern every time. The big ships in the center, smaller ships in a circle around them. When they move, they all move together like they're connected by invisible strings." Kate had been taking notes on everything the Zephyrians did, how they communicated with each other, how they positioned their ships, how their commanders gave orders. She was building a complete picture of how they fought. "Anything else interesting?" Kate asked. "Yes, ma'am. They keep sending the same types of messages back to their base. Same format, same length, same frequency. It's like they're following a script." Kate smiled. The aliens were predictable, just like Dr. Cole had said. They did everything the same way every time. Meanwhile, War Master Quindar was becoming frustrated. His fleet had been following the human trail for a week, but instead of finding one primitive colony, they had discovered something disturbing. "Report," Quindar ordered his intelligence officer, Subcommander Lexivor. "War Master, we have found evidence of human presence in 12 star systems so far. Each system has at least one inhabited world, and some have multiple colonies." Quindar studied the star map on his command screen. Red dots showed where they had found human settlements. There were more red dots than he had expected. 12 systems? How is this possible? Primitive species do not spread so far. "There is more, War Master. Each colony appears to have its own defensive fleet. The ship designs are different in each system." "Different how?" Sub-Commander Lexvor brought up images of human ships they had observed from long range. In System 4, their ships are long and thin, designed for speed. In System 7, their ships are thick and heavily armored. In System 9, their ships have unusual weapon configurations we do not recognize. Quindar stared at the images. This was not what he had expected. Most species in the galaxy built the same types of ships everywhere. Standard designs, standard weapons, standard tactics. It was efficient and logical. But these humans seemed to build different ships for different purposes. Some systems had fast ships, others had strong ships, others had ships with strange weapons. It was chaotic and inefficient, but it was also unpredictable. War Master, there is something else, Sub-Commander Lexvor said. We are detecting construction activity in every system we observe. They are building new ships and expanding their colonies. How quickly are they building? Faster than any species we have encountered. Much faster. Quindar felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The humans were not just spread across multiple systems. They were actively growing, building more ships and settlements even while his fleet was watching them. Back on the Shadowrunner, Kate Miller was recording everything she saw. The Zephyrian fleet was impressive, but she was learning their weaknesses. Pete, have you noticed how they react when something unexpected happens? Yes, ma'am. Yesterday, when that asteroid drifted into their formation, it took them 20 minutes to adjust their positions. They had to call their commander, wait for orders, then move one ship at a time. And when they encountered that solar storm, they stopped completely and waited for it to pass. Never tried to go around it or adapt their route. Kate was building a picture of an enemy that was powerful, but inflexible. They followed rules and procedures perfectly, but they could not adapt quickly to new situations. Send a message to New Haven, Kate ordered. Tell Coordinator Rodriguez that the aliens are systematic but predictable. They have strong ships but weak tactics. The message was sent through a series of hidden relay stations that the Zephyrians could not detect. Within hours, Amy Rodriguez and her team were analyzing Kate's intelligence reports. Dr. Nathan Cole was particularly interested in the psychological observations. They sound like a highly structured society, probably ruled by strict hierarchies where questioning orders is not allowed. Amy nodded. That's good for us. Flexible tactics will confuse them. Meanwhile, War Master Quindar was making his own discoveries. His fleet had now found evidence of human presence in 25 star systems. Each system was different. Each colony had its own character. But they were all clearly part of the same civilization. This is not possible, Quindar muttered to himself. Primitive species cannot control so much territory. But the evidence was clear. The humans had spread across a huge area of space. They had hundreds of colonies, thousands of ships, and industrial capacity that seemed to grow every day. The worst part was that War Master Quindar was beginning to suspect that what he was seeing was not the full extent of human civilization. The colonies he was observing were all on the edge of human space. The core worlds, the important worlds, were still hidden deeper in their territory. Sub-Commander Lexvor, how many ships do you estimate the humans possess? Lexvor consulted his reports. Based on what we have observed, at least 10,000 vessels. Possibly many more. 10,000 ships. War Master Quindar had brought 50 ships on this mission. Even if the human ships were primitive, 10,000 was a very large number. For the first time in his long military career, War Master Quindar began to wonder if 50 ships would be enough. He decided to send a message back to Emperor Zarthul. The message was simple, but disturbing. The humans are not primitive. They are not small. We may have made a serious mistake. But the message would take 3 days to reach the imperial capital. And by then, the situation was going to get much worse. Kate Miller watched the Zephyrian fleet from her hidden position and smiled. The aliens thought they were learning about humanity, but really humanity was learning about them, and humans were very good at learning. Emperor Zarthul read War Master Quindar's message 3 times. Each time his anger grew stronger. The humans were not primitive. They were not small. They had embarrassed his empire and made his commanders look like fools. Enough, the Emperor said to his empty throne room. His voice echoed off the crystal walls. I will show these humans what happens when someone challenges the Zephyrian Empire. The Emperor activated his communication system and sent orders across the galaxy. Every military base, every fleet commander, every battle station received the same message. Prepare for total war against the human species. But the Emperor was impatient. He wanted to send a message to the humans immediately, something that would make them surrender before the main war began. He chose the human colony at Riverside Station because his scouts reported it was lightly defended. Admiral Vexcon, the Emperor called. Admiral Vexcon was younger than most Zephyrian commanders, but he was ambitious and cruel. He had destroyed 3 rebel planets in the past year, turning them into lifeless rocks floating in space. My Emperor, I am ready to serve. Take the 7th Battle Fleet to the human colony at Riverside Station. Destroy it completely. Leave no survivors. I want the other human worlds to see what happens when they defy us. Admiral Vexcon bowed. The humans will learn to fear the Empire, my Emperor. The 7th Battle Fleet was massive, 150 warships, including the mighty dreadnought Imperial Fury. Each ship carried enough weapons to level a city. Admiral Vexcon was confident that no primitive species could stand against such force. At Riverside Station, life was peaceful. The colony was home to 800,000 humans who farmed, built factories, and raised their families. They knew about the alien threat, but Riverside was far from the border. They thought they were safe. Fleet Admiral Tony Brooks commanded the local defense force from his flagship Defender. Tony was 50 years old, a veteran of several conflicts between human colonies. He had 20 ships under his command, small vessels compared to what was coming. Admiral, we're getting reports from our scout network, said his communications officer, Lieutenant Dan Foster. Large alien fleet approaching. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Tony looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was huge, much larger than anything the humans had faced before. But Tony had been preparing for this moment ever since Captain Morrison's first contact report. Send the signal, Tony ordered. All colonies, this is Riverside Station. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Colonel Maria Santos was Tony's tactical officer. She was brilliant at finding ways to win battles that seemed impossible. Maria had studied every piece of intelligence about the Zephyrians, and she had a plan. Admiral, recommend we implement Operation Swarm, Maria said. Tony nodded. Operation Swarm was risky, but it was their best chance against a larger enemy. When Admiral Vexcon's fleet arrived at Riverside Station, he expected to see terrified humans trying to surrender. Instead, he found something that confused him. The human fleet was spread out across the entire star system. Instead of grouping together for defense like any logical species would do, they had scattered their ships everywhere. Some were hiding behind asteroids, others were near the system's gas giant, and a few were actually moving away from the planet they were supposed to protect. What are they doing? Admiral Vexcon asked his tactical officer. Why are they not defending their colony? Unknown, Admiral. Their formation makes no sense. Admiral Vexcon decided the humans were simply panicking. All ships, attack formation. We will destroy them quickly, and then bombard their planet. The Zephyrian fleet moved into their standard battle formation, the big ships in the center, smaller ships forming protective rings around them. It was a formation that had won 1,000 battles across the galaxy. But this time something went wrong. The scattered human ships suddenly came alive. They attacked from every direction at once, moving fast and unpredictably. Some came from behind asteroids, others dove down from above the system's plane, and a few actually came from behind the Zephyrian fleet. How did they get behind us? Admiral Vexcon shouted. The human ships were small, but they moved like angry wasps. They fired their weapons and then immediately changed direction, never staying in one place long enough for the Zephyrians to target them effectively. Colonel Maria Santos was coordinating the attack from her command ship Lightning. She watched as her plan unfolded perfectly. Group Alpha, hit their port flank and then scatter. Group Beta, target their command ship's sensors. Group Gamma, release the drones. The drones were Maria's secret weapon. Thousands of small, unmanned ships that swarmed around the Zephyrian fleet like angry insects. Each drone was barely larger than a person, but they carried powerful explosives. The Zephyrian ships had weapons designed to fight other large warships. They could not target the tiny, fast-moving drones effectively. The drones flew between the alien ships, exploding against their hulls and damaging their weapon systems. Admiral Vexcan watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by creatures he had thought were primitive. His ships were powerful, but they could not adapt to this chaotic style of fighting. All ships maintain formation, he ordered, but his captains were panicking. Some tried to chase the fast human ships and broke formation. Others turned to fire at the drones and hit their own allies by mistake. The perfect Zephyrian battle formation fell apart. Fleet Admiral Tony Brooks saw his chance. All ships, focus, fire on their flagship. Now! 20 human ships concentrated their fire on the Imperial Fury. The massive Zephyrian dreadnought's shields flared and failed. Explosions ran along its hull as the human weapons found their target. Admiral Vexcan felt his ship shaking apart around him. Retreat, all ships retreat! But retreating was not easy. The human ships chased the fleeing Zephyrians, attacking their engines and preventing them from escaping cleanly. By the time the alien fleet reached safe distance, they had lost 60 ships. More than half their force was gone. The few surviving Zephyrian ships limped back toward Imperial space, carrying recordings of the battle. When other Zephyrian commanders saw the footage, they could not believe what they were watching. The mighty 7th Battle Fleet, one of the Empire's elite forces, had been destroyed by a handful of primitive human ships. The news spread quickly through the Empire. For the first time in 800 years, a major Zephyrian fleet had not just been defeated, but utterly destroyed by an enemy they had thought was weak. On the Imperial capital, Emperor Zarthul watched the battle recordings. With growing horror, the humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They did not follow rules or formations. They attacked from everywhere at once, used weapons the Empire had never considered, and showed no fear of his mighty warships. "How many ships did we lose?" the Emperor asked. 67, my Emperor, including the Imperial Fury. "And the humans?" 3 ships damaged. No ships destroyed. The Emperor stared at the numbers. 67 Imperial ships destroyed. 0 human ships lost. It was impossible, but it had happened. "My Emperor," his intelligence officer said carefully, "there is something else. Our long-range scouts report massive energy signatures coming from the direction of human core space. Industrial activity on a scale we have never seen before." The Emperor felt cold fear spreading through his body. "What kind of industrial activity?" "Ship construction, my Emperor. Lots of ship construction. And the energy readings suggest they are building vessels much larger than anything we observed at Riverside Station." Emperor Zarthul realized the terrible truth. The humans who had destroyed the 7th Battle Fleet were not the human military. They were just a colonial defense force, fighting with whatever ships they had available. The real human military was still coming. For the first time in his life, the Emperor of the mighty Zephyrian Empire began to wonder if his forces were strong enough to win this war. In space above Riverside Station, Fleet Admiral Tony Brooks looked at the wreckage of the alien fleet floating in space. His people had won an impossible victory, but he knew this was just the beginning. "Send a message to Earth Command," Tony ordered. "Tell them the aliens have committed to full war. Tell them it's time to show these Zephyrians what the human fleet really looks like." Emperor Zarthul had not slept in 3 days. He stood in his war room surrounded by holographic displays showing the movements of every ship in his empire. Red lights blinked across the galaxy, each one representing a battle fleet moving toward human space. The Emperor had called up every military force he could find. 3,000 ships, the largest fleet in Zephyrian history. Surely no primitive species could stand against such power. "My Emperor," War Master Quindar said as he entered the room. He had returned from his scouting mission with disturbing news. "The fleet is ready to attack." "Good. We will crush these humans once and for all. After today, no species will dare to challenge the Empire again." But even as the Emperor spoke, he felt worried. The humans had already done things that should have been impossible. They had escaped from capture, spread across dozens of star systems, and destroyed a major Imperial fleet. What else were they capable of? At the edge of Zephyrian space, Admiral Rick Hayes sat in the command center of his flagship, the Terra's Pride. Rick was 60 years old and had commanded fleets for most of his adult life. but he had never commanded anything like the force that surrounded him now. The Earth defense fleet stretched across space as far as his sensors could reach. 10,000 ships from every human world, every colony, every outpost. Each ship was different, designed by the people who built it to fight in the way that suited them best. There were fast attack ships from the asteroid mining colonies, built to dart between rocks and strike without warning. There were heavy battleships from the industrial worlds, armored like flying fortresses and armed with weapons that could crack planets. There were carrier ships from the agricultural worlds, each one launching swarms of fighter craft piloted by farmers who knew how to work together like a flock of birds. And there were ships that the Zephyrians had never seen before, vessels that could operate inside gas giant atmospheres, ships designed to fight in the crushing gravity near black holes, experimental craft that bent the laws of physics in ways that alien scientists said were impossible. "Admiral," said Captain Ellen Price, his tactical officer, "we're receiving a message from the Zephyrian fleet. They want to talk." Rick smiled. "Put them through." Emperor Zarthul appeared on the main screen. He tried to look confident, but Rick could see the fear in his alien eyes. "I am Emperor Zarthul of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender immediately or face the destruction of your entire species." "I'm Admiral Rick Hayes of the Earth Defense Fleet," Rick replied calmly, "and I think you should look at your sensors before you make any more threats." The Emperor's expression changed as his officers whispered urgently in his ear. Rick knew what they were telling him. The human fleet was massive, bigger than anything the Zephyrians had ever faced. "This is impossible," the Emperor said. "Our intelligence report said you were a primitive species with a few dozen ships." "Your intelligence was wrong about a lot of things," Rick said. "Those ships that beat you at Riverside Station, those were colonial defense forces, local militia, weekend warriors." Rick gestured toward the fleet around him. "This is what our real military looks like." Ambassador Helen Wright stepped forward to stand beside Rick. Helen was a diplomat, but she had spent the last month learning everything about Zephyrian culture and psychology. She knew exactly what to say. "Emperor Zarthul," Helen said, "we don't want to destroy your empire. We just want you to leave us alone. Call off your fleets, go back to your own space, and we can all live in peace." The Emperor's forearms trembled with rage. "The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with primitives. We rule this galaxy." "You ruled this galaxy," Rick corrected. "Past tense. Times have changed." Admiral Rick gave a hand signal to his fleet commanders. Across the vast human formation, ships began to move, not attacking, just repositioning themselves to show their true numbers and capabilities. The Zephyrian sensors went crazy as they tried to count the human vessels. 3,000 ships became 5,000, then 8,000, then 10,000, and still more ships appeared at the edge of sensor range. War Master Quindar stared at his tactical displays in horror. "My Emperor, they have more ships than we do. Many more." "How many more?" "At least 3 times our numbers, possibly more. And their formations. I do not understand their formations." The human fleet was not arranged in the neat, predictable patterns that Zephyrian military doctrine required. Instead, the ships moved in fluid groups that constantly changed shape and position. Some formations looked like hunting packs, others like swirling storms, and others like living creatures breathing in space. "They fight like chaos itself," War Master Quindar whispered. Captain Jake Morrison watched the confrontation from the bridge of his new ship, the Wanderer II. It was much larger than his old scout vessel, armed with the latest human technology and crewed by some of the best people in the fleet. "Hard to believe it all started with us running away from 6 alien ships," Jake said to his new communications officer, Lieutenant Carol Stone. "Yes, sir, but look how far we've come." Jake smiled. The humans had learned fast. In just a few months, they had analyzed Zephyrian technology, adapted their tactics, and built new ships designed specifically to fight this enemy. Human creativity and adaptability had turned a desperate first contact into a position of strength. Emperor Zarthul made his decision. Pride and 800 years of easy victories would not let him back down. even when faced with impossible odds. "All ships, attack formation," the Emperor ordered. The Zephyrian fleet moved forward in their traditional formation. 3,000 ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns, advancing like a giant machine of war. Admiral Rick Hayes watched them come and shook his head sadly. "They never learn. All ships, you are cleared to engage. Try not to destroy them all. We might need some survivors to spread the word." What happened next was not really a battle. It was a demonstration. The human fleet flowed around the Zephyrian formation like water around a rock. Fast ships attacked from impossible angles. Heavy ships punched through the enemy lines, and carrier groups launched so many fighters that they darkened space like clouds of insects. The Zephyrians tried to maintain their formation, but the human attacks came from everywhere at once. Ships designed to fight in asteroid fields darted between the alien vessels, causing chaos. Ships built for gas giant warfare used gravity weapons that the Zephyrians had never encountered. Experimental vessels fired weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Within an hour, the mighty Zephyrian warfleet was scattered and broken. Most of their ships were destroyed or disabled, and the survivors were fleeing in all directions. Emperor Zarthul's flagship was surrounded by human vessels. His shields were down, his weapons were gone, and his proud warship was nothing more than a floating target. Admiral Rick Hayes appeared on the Emperor's screen again. "Do you want to talk now?" The Emperor looked around his damaged bridge. Half his crew was dead or wounded, and the rest looked at him with fear and doubt. For 800 years, the Zephyrian Empire had ruled through strength. Now that strength was gone. "What do you want?" the Emperor asked quietly. "Peace," Helen Wright said, stepping forward. "We want you to stop attacking innocent species. We want you to respect the territory of others. We want you to learn that being strong doesn't mean you have the right to hurt people who are weaker than you." "And if we refuse?" Admiral Rick Hayes gestured toward the human fleet surrounding them. "Then we'll teach you the lesson as many times as it takes." The Emperor understood. The humans could have destroyed his entire fleet, could have invaded his empire, and conquered his worlds. But they were offering mercy instead, peace instead of revenge. It was a concept that the Zephyrian Empire had forgotten long ago. "We accept your terms," the Emperor said. Ambassador Helen Wright smiled. "Good. We'll send a diplomatic team to work out the details. But remember, Emperor, this scout vessel that found you, the one that started all this trouble," she gestured toward the Wanderer 2 floating among the massive human fleet. "That really was just a scout vessel. And this fleet that defeated you? This is just our border patrol. You never want to see what happens if you make us send our real military." Emperor Zarthul stared at the thousands of human ships surrounding his broken fleet. Border patrol. These incredible vessels that had crushed his empire's finest forces were just border patrol. For the first time in 800 years, the Zephyrian Empire had learned humility. Captain Jake Morrison opened a communication channel to the defeated alien emperor. "Emperor Zarthul, this is Captain Morrison. Remember me?" The Emperor looked at the human who had started this whole conflict by refusing to surrender to a simple boarding party. "I remember you." "Good," Jake said with a smile. "Welcome to the neighborhood."